So we know how to create the Spring container to read configuration, which is XML based, and how to basically put a bean in there, which is managed by Spring, and then to retrieve it from that application context. So that's good. I just want to point something out quickly before we carry on. And that's basically about the notion of a thing in Spring called scope. So to demonstrate this, if I copy this to make two variable references, bean1 and bean2, and we don't even need this now, to be honest, for this. Actually, I'll create 3. Why not? So if I set a breakpoint, just drag it down here, and now Control Shift and D to debug. If I step over this line to set the first variable up, the first reference, to bean1, then we can see here that bean1 has a reference to my service, and this is the representation of the address in memory where it is. In other words, it's just a number which gives the actual instance an identity, if you will. If I do F8 again, you'll see that bean2 as a variable reference also points to my service at 1506. So basically both the bean1 variable and the bean2 variable both point to exactly the same instance. And similarly as well, if I do bean3, again, it's the same instance. And what's happening here is that the Spring container, which is responsible for creating these beans, if you remember, so we've delegated the power of actually creating these beans ourselves, we've delegated those to the Spring container. That's the entire point of Spring, that it manages the life cycle of the beans and the relationships between the beans and all that kind of stuff, with dependency injection, which we'll cover shortly. Because we've done that, Spring's in control of how the beans are created, and the default so-called scope for beans being created in Spring is a thing called Singleton scope. And what that means is that a bean, when it's placed in the Spring runtime, is going to be a singleton. In other words, there'll only exist one instance for the entire application, which is bound into the application context. So Spring's effectively made it a singleton. Singleton meaning that there's only one instance in the application. And when we do getBean, when we call getBean off of the context, it's getting us a reference to that singleton, that one and only instance which we have in the Spring container. So that's Singleton scope.